They say you never know who your real family is until you really need them. For me, that revelation came in a hospital room, staring at empty chairs and wilting flowers, counting the days since anyone had visited. I'm Julia Martinez, and this is the story of how a car accident showed me the truth about family, and how that truth eventually set me free. 2 years ago, I was living what most would consider a successful life. At 31, I was a senior software developer at a major tech company, making the kind of money that made my immigrant parents proud. My younger sister Elena was the family's golden child, the brilliant medical researcher who was saving lives while I just played with computers, as Mom liked to say. But I'd made peace with being second best. At least I thought I had. The accident happened on a rainy Tuesday evening. I was driving home from a late meeting, thinking about the project deadline looming at the end of the week. One moment I was stopped at a red light, and the next, a drunk driver plowed into my car at full speed. The impact sent my car spinning into oncoming traffic, where a delivery truck couldn't stop in time. I woke up 3 days later in the ICU. The damage was extensive, multiple broken bones, internal injuries, and worst of all, a spinal cord injury that left me temporarily paralyzed from the waist down. The doctors were optimistic about recovery with intensive rehabilitation, but they made it clear the journey would be long and difficult. My family visited that first week. Mom cried, Dad looked uncomfortable, and Elena spoke in clinical terms about my prognosis, as if I were one of her research subjects rather than her sister. They promised to be there for me to help with my recovery, to support me through rehabilitation. Those promises lasted exactly 8 days. We can't take time off work, Mom explained over the phone. Your father's company is going through restructuring, and Elena has a crucial research project. I understand, I said, though I didn't. Not really. How could work be more important than helping your daughter learn to walk again? The physical therapy was brutal. Learning to move again, fighting through pain that made me wish I was still unconscious, pushing my body inch by excruciating inch toward recovery. The therapists were amazing, but they couldn't be there all the time. Those long hours alone in my hospital room, that's when the loneliness really hit. My team from work visited more often than my family did. They brought laptops so I could code during my lucid moments, kept me updated on office gossip, made me feel like I was still connected to the world outside. My best friend Maria practically moved into the hospital room, sleeping in the uncomfortable chair despite my protests. But my family? They were always too busy. Dad had important meetings. Mom couldn't drive in the city. Elena was presenting at conferences, applying for grants, building her career. You understand, don't you, Julia? Mom would say during her brief phone calls. Elena's research could help so many people. We have to support her dreams. The visitor logs told the real story. Maria started keeping track after the first month, marking down every visit, every call, every excuse. Over 6 months of hospitalization and rehabilitation, my parents visited exactly 4 times. Elena came twice, both times for less than 30 minutes. Meanwhile, I fought. I fought through the pain, through the despair, through the moments when giving up seemed like the easier option. I learned to stand again, then to walk with assistance, then finally to take steps on my own. Each milestone was celebrated by my friends and my medical team, while my family responded to the news with distracted "that's nice, dear" comments before changing the subject to Elena's latest achievement. The final insult came when I was ready to be discharged. I needed someone to help at home for the first few weeks, to assist with daily tasks while I continued outpatient therapy. "Oh, honey," Mom said when I asked, "we just can't right now. Elena's applying for a major research grant, and we need to help her prepare her presentation. Maybe you could hire someone." Maria moved in with me instead. She took family leave from her job, rearranged her entire life to help me recover. My real family, it turned out, had nothing to do with blood. I returned to work part-time after 3 months, gradually building back to full capacity. My recovery progressed better than expected, though I still walked with a slight limp and needed regular physical therapy. Life settled into a new normal, and I tried to make peace with what I'd learned about my family's priorities. Then came the call that changed everything. "Julia," Mom's voice was trembling. "We need to talk. Elena's sick. She needs a kidney transplant, and you're the only compatible match in the family." The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so painful. Now they needed me. Now they had time. Now they cared. We're having a family meeting this weekend to discuss the transplant, Mom continued. You'll come, of course. Elena needs you. I looked at the visitor logs Maria had kept, still stored in my desk drawer. 2 years of documented neglect, of chosen absence, of prioritizing everything else over their injured daughter. I'll be there, I said quietly, and I'm bringing some documents you need to see. Documents? What documents? You'll find out on Saturday. I hung up before she could respond. Maria found me staring at the logs later that night. Are you going to do it? She asked. Give Elena your kidney? I traced my fingers over the neat columns of dates and empty spaces. I haven't decided yet, but first they need to face what they did. What they didn't do. They won't like that. No, I agreed, they won't. But maybe it's time they understood exactly what family means, and what it doesn't. I spent the next few days gathering evidence, not just the visitor logs, but every text message showing canceled visits, every email with excuses, every photo posted on social media of what my family was doing instead of being with me. A timeline of abandonment documented in clinical detail that would make Elena's research papers proud. Saturday approached, and with it, a reckoning 2 years in the making. My family was about to learn that sometimes the biggest betrayals aren't in what people do to you. They're in what people don't do when you need them most. My parents' house looked exactly the same as it had before my accident. Neat lawn, trimmed hedges, Elena's medical school graduation photo prominently displayed in the front window. My achievements had never earned window space. Maria insisted on driving me. You shouldn't do this alone, she said, squeezing my hand as we pulled into the driveway. The visitor logs sat heavy in my bag, along with 2 years' worth of documented absences. The family was already gathered in the living room when I walked in. Mom and Dad on the sofa, Elena in the armchair, looking pale but still managing to be the center of attention. Her husband Thomas hovered nearby, worry etched on his face. Julia, Mom started, rising to hug me. I stepped back. Let's skip the pretense, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. You want my kidney. Sweetie, that's not. We want to discuss options. Mom faltered as I pulled out the visitor logs. Before we discuss anything, I think we need to review some history. I opened the first logbook. Let's start with my time in the ICU. Out of the first 30 days, when I was fighting for my life, how many times did you visit? Silence fell over the room. Elena shifted uncomfortably in her chair. 3 visits, I continued, reading from the log. Total time spent, 4 hours and 20 minutes. Meanwhile, according to your social media posts from that month, I pulled out printed screenshots. You attended 4 dinner parties, 2 charity galas, and Elena's research presentation. We had commitments, Dad protested weakly. Commitments. Yes, let's talk about those. I moved to the next page. During my 6 months of rehabilitation, learning to walk again, you visited 4 times. Elena, you came twice. Both times you left early for work meetings. My research was at a critical stage, Elena interjected. You know how important. More important than your sister learning to stand again. More important than helping with basic physical therapy exercises. More important than just being there. I laid out the evidence methodically. Social media posts showing them at restaurants while I ate hospital food alone. Email chains of canceled visits and excuses. Text messages promising to come tomorrow, next week, next month. Promises never kept. But the most interesting part, I continued, pulling out a final document, is this. A grant proposal Elena submitted during my rehabilitation. Specifically, the section about understanding patient isolation and its impact on recovery. Did you use my experience as research material, Elena? Did my abandonment make for compelling data? Elena's face went white. That's not. I would never. You did. I found the case study buried in the appendix. Patient Jam, age 31, spinal cord injury. You documented my isolation while contributing to it. Congratulations on getting that grant, by the way. I heard it was quite prestigious. Mom was crying now, Dad staring at the floor. Thomas looked between Elena and me, realization dawning on his face. Now you want my kidney, I said into the heavy silence. Now you have time to visit, to call, to care. Now you understand the importance of family support during medical crisis. Julia, please, Elena whispered. I know we weren't there enough, but I'm your sister. I need you. Need me? Or need my organ? Because 2 years ago, when I needed my sister, you were too busy building your career to spend more than an hour at my bedside. I pulled out one final document, my medical records from the accident. Did you know the accident damaged my kidneys? Not severely enough to need a transplant, but enough that donating one could put me at risk. My doctors advised against it when they ran the compatibility tests. But you didn't know that, did you? Because you never asked about my recovery, never checked my medical records, never cared enough to know. The room erupted in chaos. Mom wailed about family duty. Dad started talking about private doctors who might give a different opinion. Elena sat frozen, her medical researcher's mind probably already calculating new survival statistics. I'm not finished, I said, my voice cutting through their reactions. I brought someone else today, someone who knows exactly what family means during a medical crisis. Maria walked in from the kitchen where she'd been waiting. She carried her own logbook, records of every night spent in my hospital room, every therapy session attended, every small victory celebrated. This is what family looks like, I said, watching their faces as they realized who she was. This is what support means. Maria took family leave from her job to help me recover. She slept in a hospital chair for months. She learned my therapy exercises to help me practice. She was there. But she's not family, Mom protested. No, I agreed. She's more than family. She's someone who chose to be there when my blood relatives chose not to be. I gathered my documents, standing carefully, my legs still ached in damp weather. Another detail my family had never bothered to learn about. I won't be donating my kidney, I said clearly, not because I can't, but because I won't. Elena's medical crisis doesn't erase 2 years of chosen absence. Your sudden need for me doesn't change your deliberate negligence when I needed you. You let your sister die. Dad's voice was harsh. No, Elena's not going to die. She's on the transplant list, and knowing her research connections, she'll probably move up quickly. She'll find a kidney, but it won't be mine. Consider it a data point for your next study on patient support systems, Elena. I walked out of that house for the last time, Maria beside me, leaving behind the sounds of my mother's sobs and my father's angry protests. Elena remained silent, perhaps finally understanding the true cost of her choices. The fallout was exactly what you'd expect. Extended family called to tell me I was heartless. Friends from the old neighborhood crossed the street to avoid me. Elena's colleagues wrote articles about the importance of family organ donation, thinly veiled attacks on my decision. But I stood firm. Sometimes the hardest choices are the most necessary ones. A year later, Helena got her transplant from an anonymous donor. She wrote a paper about the experience, ironically focusing on the importance of family support during medical crises. I read it during my lunch break at work, sitting with Maria in the hospital cafeteria where I now volunteer, helping other accident victims navigate their recovery. Yesterday, I received a letter from Elena. I understand now, she wrote, not just about the kidney, but about everything. I've been reading my own case studies, seeing them with new eyes. Every patient's story is about more than just medical outcomes. It's about who shows up, who stays, who chooses to be there. I failed at being your sister long before you refused to be my donor. I filed the letter away with the visitor logs, a record of lessons learned too late. My slight limp remains, a permanent reminder of both the accident and its aftermath. But it's no longer a symbol of abandonment. Instead, it reminds me of the strength I found, the family I chose, and the boundaries I learned to set. Maria and I started a support group for patients going through long-term rehabilitation. We teach them about more than just physical recovery. We teach them about choosing their support system wisely, about recognizing true family by actions rather than blood. Mom still sends holiday cards, always including carefully worded hints about reconciliation. Dad forwards articles about family obligations and forgiveness. Elena occasionally emails about her research, never directly mentioning the transplant or the past. I keep their messages in a folder labeled History, alongside the visitor logs and medical records. Not to maintain anger, but to remember that sometimes the biggest gift we can give ourselves is the courage to say no to those who only want us when they need something. The accident taught me to walk again, but it also taught me to stand for myself, stand up to manipulation, stand firm in my decisions. Some might call it cruel to deny an organ to a dying sister. I call it honest to acknowledge that sisterhood is built day by day, choice by choice, presence by presence, not demanded in a crisis after years of absence. Today, I walk with a slight limp into my volunteer shift at the hospital. In my bag are the visitor logs, not my old ones, but new ones I keep for current patients, documenting who shows up, who stays, who cares enough to be present. Sometimes seeing those patterns helps them understand their own support systems more clearly. They say you never know who your real family is until you really need them. I'd amend that to say, you never know who your real family is until you see who shows up not just in crisis, but in all the small moments that make up a life. And sometimes the family we choose proves stronger than the family we're born into. My kidney remains where it belongs, and so do my boundaries. Both, it turns out, are vital organs for a healthy life.